All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, all arise.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Let's all take a deep breath together, shall we? Both metaphorically and literally. I mean, come on, breathe with me. Whew. We gather this morning seeking respite, understanding, and hope. Respite from the intense energy of these many months of campaigning, from the suspense of a socially distanced election process far slower of result than we are used to, from the disappointment that the outcome was not as decisive as many of us had envisioned. Understanding of what happens next and what it means in the long run, of how things may go from now until January and after, of what our fellow citizens are thinking, and how we are going to continue to protect ourselves and those we love. And hope for lingering decisions yet unconcluded, for the healing potential of a new administration, for the soul of our nation as we assess the deep moral differences that divide us and ponder how to mend the harm done to vulnerable communities and lives. In 1987, the Czech resistance leader Václav Havel, who would go on to become the first president of the newly established Czech Republic, wrote this in his book, Disturbing the Peace. Hope, especially in situations that are particularly hopeless, such as prison. Hope is a state of mind, not a state of the world. Hope is not a prognostication. It is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. It transcends the world that is immediately experienced and is anchored somewhere beyond those horizons. I feel that its deepest roots are in the transcendental, just as the roots of human responsibility are. Hope, in this deep and powerful sense, is not the same as joy that things are going well, or the willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. The more unpromising the situation in which we demonstrate hope, the deeper that hope is. Hope is not the same thing as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but rather the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. In short, I think that the deepest and most important form of hope, the only one that can keep us above water and urge us to good works, and the only true source of the breathtaking human dimension of the spirit and its efforts, is something we get, as it were, from elsewhere. It is also this hope, above all, that gives us the strength to live and continually to try new things, even in conditions that may seem hopeless, as ours do here and now. The hope that we seek this morning does not lie in vote totals, even when we are glad of them. It is not a function of our privilege, nor of the world meeting our expectations. The sacred, sustaining hope that allows us to create joy and build community, even in the midst of suffering and danger, lies in the power of our vision of a world that makes ethical sense, a world of safety, justice, peace, freedom, compassion, and wholeness for all people equally. That vision is not something that can be proven. It can only be loved for the sake of its own beauty, for the sake of our children and heirs. One of the tasks of our covenant community of memory and promise is to cast that vision of a possible world as brightly and invitingly as we can, so that our hope stays anchored in it to nourish our work of change. This morning we pause to breathe deeply, to remember that we are not alone and that we are the heirs of the light and labor of many who came before us. We pause to reflect, to ponder the deeper meanings of this moment and the questions that now arise as we look forward toward the future. We pause to illuminate once again that vision of human wholeness so compelling that it bends the arc of the moral universe toward justice and sustains our spirits in the midst of sorrow, discouragement, and long labor, as well as rejoicing. We pause to kindle once again the chalice of hope. In its glow, may we find the path forward, and may its light reveal to us our common humanity and our place in the interdependent web of all creation. I invite you to share in the chat the place where your chalice is lighted this morning, and then we will continue with our words of covenant and our singing together. Let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Any gathering of people has a political dimension. All of our relationships, even the most intimate, are political statements. Just ask any gay couple or biracial child. The existence of this congregation, founded upon covenant promises, affirming and promoting the inherent worth of every person, the democratic process, and the interconnected web of all existence, is a political advocacy and a campaign promise every day of every year. The way in which we order our lives together is a laboratory for our values and ideals, demonstrating the world that we want to build together. We ask for your financial support in times of uncertainty as well as confidence, so that our witness to these values may be clear and credible and engaging to others beyond our inner circle. Candidates and elections matter. We see how much in shaping our collective future. So does the humble work of the church, week by week, serving the afflicted and calling us all to live not by fear but by hope into the world we believe is possible together. Your generosity is essential to that work. And so this morning's offering will now be gratefully received.
Hold on for a little while longer. Hold on for a little while longer. Hold on for a little while longer. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Fight on for a little while longer. Fight on for a little while longer. Fight on for a little while longer. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. March on for a little while longer. March on for a little while longer. March on for a little while longer. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Sing on for a little while longer. Sing on for a little while longer. Sing on for a little while longer. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright.
Let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Collapse Takes a Lifetime by Indi Samarajiva. Americans have completely unrealistic expectations of, well, many things, but especially how long recovery will take. You think you're going to vote this away in a few weeks? LOL, no. Speaking of a as a recovered collapse addict, recovery doesn't take months, quarters, or even years. Recovery takes generations. You don't just lose 200,000 plus people and vote it better again. You don't crash your economy and recover right away. This is the work of generations. Other people, people not yet born, will have to clean up your bloody mess. And, honestly, it will never be the same. No society can recover from such heavy trauma quickly, whatever the cause. No society where this is self-inflicted is just going to be fine. Frankly, it's too late for you. You have got to start thinking about your children. As John Oliver said, you're at the end of a generational battle, and you lost. I am not speaking for you. I am speaking for your children. If you break your politics, there's no quick fix. It simply takes time. On a scale which people attuned to iPhone release cycles cannot perceive. It takes, in a word, regeneration. New human beings. You literally have to have sex and generate new human beings to solve these problems, and God has to accept the old returns. This takes forever. You have got to start thinking generationally. This may actually help your mental state because, while difficult, generational change is at least not impossible. Yes, you probably can't do shit now, but what example will you set? No, the bastards won't disappear in one election. But how are you raising your children? This is all possible. You need to start thinking about your children. If you're lucky, they'll remember the lives you lived and not the news. So please, do not think of yourselves. This is both useless and hopeless. Think about a baby in your arms. This is both terrifying and full of hope.
An Invocation to Liberty from the words of Abraham Lincoln. What constitutes the bulwark of our own liberty and independence? It is not our frowning battlements, our bristling seacoast, our army and navy. Our reliance is in the love for liberty implanted in our hearts. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes freedom as the heritage of people in all lands everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and you have planted the seeds of despotism at your own doors. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, and cannot long retain it. Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world? Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. Passion has helped us, but can do so no more. Reason must furnish the materials for our future support and defense. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as we are given to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the wounds of the nation, to care for those who shall have borne persecution, and for the widows and the orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
From Dan Rather, November 4th, 2020. We awaken to a country in pain, deeply divided and in search of its soul. That we have had an election with razor-thin margins in several states is not a complete anomaly in our history. That the chasms between us feel so fraught and so alienating does not feel uniquely precarious. There was no wave, although if the votes turn out in a certain way in the final counting, Biden could win a healthy number of states. And let's start with a basic fact this morning. A Biden presidency is a completely different destiny for America than a continuation of what we've had. Although there are potentially dangerous days ahead, I remain optimistic. I don't think that the worst fears of violence or stopping the vote count will be realized. I believe our institutions will hold. The question that does loom is, what's next? I don't minimize the challenges we are facing. The struggle for justice and the truth seems more difficult than many had hoped, but that doesn't lessen the importance of the mission. Quite the contrary. I know many are tired, disappointed, and in disbelief. Many wonder what their country truly is and where it might go. All of these are natural reactions to where America is today. But I have seen over the course of my lifetime that victories are rarely easy, and the struggle for healing and hope takes time and perseverance, because the forces of hate and lies are always easier to summon. There is a lot that is broken, deeply broken, but there are millions upon millions of our fellow citizens who wake up each morning undaunted, ready to do the hard work to help others and make this world a better place. Today, I honor that spirit. As long as I have breath, I will continue to fight for the America I want to live in.
Dawn oversees percolating coffee and the new wreckage of the world. Another day when I have to tiptoe around the police and passive-aggressive emails from other people who sit only a few feet away from me. Another day of fractured humans who decide how I will live and die. And I have to act like I like it so I can keep a job, be a team player, pay taxes on it. I have to act like I am happy to be slammed, severed, and swindled. Otherwise, I'm just part of the problem, a rebel-rouser and rude. They want me to like it, or at least pretend, so the pretty veils that blanket who we really are this complicated history can stay pretty and veiled, like some desert belly dancer who must be seen but not heard. How will we make it through this, Ms. Brooks? Hold on, she whispers. We are a world of lesions. Human has become hindrance. We must be stamped and have papers. And still, it's not enough. Ignorance has become powerful. The dice that rolls our futures is platinum, but hollow inside. Do you see that, Ms. Brooks? Do you see what we've become? They are skinning our histories, deporting our roots, detonating our very right to tell the truth. We are one step closer to annihilation. Hold on, she says, 2 million light years away. She's right. Hold on, everybody. Hold on, because the poets are still living and writing. Hold on to the last of the disappearing bees and that great barrier reef. Hold on to the one sitting next to you, not masked behind some keyboard. The one right next to you. The one who live and love right next to you. Hold on to them. And when we bury another grandmother or another Black boy, when we stand in front of a pipeline, pour another glass of dirty drinking water and put it on the dining room table, next to the crepe lodge, bratwurst, tamales, collards, and dumplings that our foremothers and fathers, immigrants, brought with them, so we all knew that we came somewhere that mattered. When we kneel on the rubbled mosques, sit in massacred prayer circles, holding on is what gets us through. We must remember who we are. We are worth fighting for. We've seen beauty. We've birthed babies who've only known a Black president. We've tasted empathy and paid it forward. We've GoFunded from wrong to right. We've marched and made love. We haven't forgotten, even if they have. Karma is keeping watch. Hold on. Hold on, everybody. Even if all you have left is that middle finger around your God-given right to be free, to be heard, to be loved, and remembered. Hold on and keep holding.
Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Never be afraid to make some noise. Stay hopeful until you die a day, and we can find a way out of no way. Yeah, we can find a way out of no way. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Never be afraid to make some noise. Stay hopeful until you die a day, and we can find a way out of no way. Yes, we can find a way out of no way. We can find a way. We can find a way. We can find a way out of no way.
What a week, right? I don't like suspense movies, and I don't like roller coasters. My threshold for adrenaline has always been quite low. So this morning, I am happy that the election is over and more than happy for the outcome. But looking back to Election Day and the days that followed, what I recall is a blurry, intense spiral of feelings, compounded of disappointment, relief, worry, and determination. Perhaps you have also experienced some or all of these as this week has unfolded. Each of these dimensions has its own validity, its own connections to history, its own spiritual implications, and each could be the occasion of a sermon in itself. But none of them has had the opportunity for deep reflection that should shape an entire Sunday morning. So I offer you this morning a selection of ideas in our readings from people with perspectives different from mine, and a handful of thoughts that I find myself carrying with me in this complex moment and into the coming weeks and beyond. I know that many of you felt on Tuesday night much the same crushing weight of disappointment that I did when it became clear that the nation as a whole had not definitively repudiated the leadership and policies of Donald Trump. Perhaps you had hoped, as I hoped, that my fellow citizens were as appalled as I was by the callousness and corruption of the current administration and were eager for the opportunity to reject them. 72 hours of suspense and 70 million votes in favor of a second term have showed that we were mistaken. Almost half the country is satisfied enough with the president's actions to want more of the same. This means that we must face some painful truth about our nation. This is who we really are. A significant portion of America explicitly does not share our progressive values of freedom, reason, honesty, or compassion. And I am persuaded that this is not because we were unclear about our message or did not work hard enough in supporting our candidates. Not this time. We did not underestimate the forces we were up against. We raised record amounts of money and record voter turnout. Neither do we need to reproach ourselves for being insufficiently respectful or sympathetic to advocates of violence and bigotry. There simply are that many of our fellow Americans whose highest priority is to protect their own real or imagined privilege. The sting of that reality check will be lasting for me, I know. Nevertheless, it did feel on Saturday morning as if I took my first genuinely deep breath in 4 years. It is a huge relief to look forward to having competent leaders and decent human beings at the head of our government come January. I don't have a fangirl crush on Joe Biden or Kamala Harris either, but that's fine. I admire them both, and at least for the moment, I trust them to do what they say they will do, to tell me the truth, and to put the well-being of the nation and the planet first. I also take some comfort in the demographic changes that are grinding slowly but inexorably in the direction of increasing diversity in our culture. The very desperateness with which overt white supremacy culture clings to power suggests that it too can read the writing on the wall of economic and population shifts. Students of learning behavior speak of a phenomenon called an extinction burst, when just before giving up on a behavior that isn't working, A subject tries one last time really hard to force a particular strategy to succeed. It's like knocking on a door that no one is answering, or a rat pressing a bar that used to dispense treats. Racism, patriarchy, and colonialism are not going to be entirely overcome this easily. But perhaps we are witnessing the extinction burst of one of their uglier and more obvious forms. In any case, I am doubling down on my own commitment to the Enlightenment propositions that truth is in many contexts knowable, that justice applies equally to all people, that creating suffering is bad, and that the vulnerable should be protected. Living 4 years with the contrary notions has persuaded me that they are not a good look for any of us, and I am relieved to be done with that experiment soon. At the same time, there is plenty left to worry about. First, the end of one presidency is not the end of the forces which brought that presidency about. It appears to me that the renewed ride of fascism is an international phenomenon, an impulse in the tides of history which has not by any means subsided, and is not something that we as voters or as nations can control. Two possibilities are especially concerning. One, the next authoritarian leader who seeks to break out of the constraints of democracy, one commentator called this Trump 2.0, might easily be less obviously ignorant, uncaring, incompetent, and self-serving than the soon-to-be ex-president. Had the current administration been just a bit more willing to observe the forms of protocol and take seriously knowledgeable advice, it might well be anticipating another 4 years at this point. My second concern is that it is not necessarily only to the right that a charismatic, unprincipled leader might make appeal. We on the liberal wing can be quite vicious in our demand for loyalty and conformity when our own power is at stake. It is not just among our political opponents, but within our own ranks and within our own hearts that we must watch against the rise of tyranny. Now, although I am enough of a student of history that I continue to believe that there is much to be learned from recalling the rise of Nazism and Hitler's Third Reich, I want to suggest an alternative historical analogy that might be more useful in helping us to escape from the trap of self-righteous inevitabilism into which our current conversation too often leads us. As we consider how to protect our 250-year experiment in democracy, I invite us to entertain a question different from the usual. Rather than saying, what should the German citizens have done in the 1920s and 30s, imagine if we were to ask, what should the indigenous inhabitants of North America have done in 1607 or 1620 when European colonies were established on their shores? Or in 1830 or 1851, when many were removed from their eastern lands and forcibly confined to reservations by the U.S. government? What does faithful, principled resistance look like when it may take centuries to bear any visible fruit, and the forces of oppression prevail time after time, life after life? As Indi Samarajiva suggests, it may not be we who actually overcome the hereditary trauma in our body politic. Our task may be to stop the attack and the bleeding, to name it honestly, and then to try to endow a new generation with the tools and the faith to heal. Still, at the end of the day, I come back finally to gratitude and determination. It is easy to be overwhelmed by the challenges that remain, to get lost in a sea of despair, as John Lewis put it. He surely understood the full weight of white supremacy, but he continued to believe in the possibility that America could live up to its proposed ideals. I think of him and Elijah Cummings both convinced that in the words of their heritage, they could make a way out of no way by sheer perseverance and leadership through service. I think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, persuaded that women belong wherever significant decisions are being made, who died defending rights of vulnerable people on the nation's highest court. I think of Tamika Atkins, Helen Balter, Inseu Vogt, and Deborah Scott, who, along with Stacey Abrams, organized the voters of Georgia and turned that southern state blue. I think of the runoff elections coming up there that could potentially give this new administration a razor-thin Senate majority, as well as the 2022 midterms. I think we are in this for the long haul, folks. We may not know all the answers for dismantling the structures of colonialism, patriarchy, and racism that have been so long baked into our culture and our legal structures, to which some of our neighbors and some of our leaders still cling. Make no mistake, those ways of seeing the world are baked into our own consciousness too, and it is only through intention and effort that we begin to sort them out, no matter what our identities are. But we know the difference between voter suppression and equal access to the polls. We know the difference between policing that serves and protects and policing that kills. We know the difference between supporting families and destroying families. We know the difference between having medical care and having funerals. We know the difference between a bully and a friend. If we achieved all the racial justice and gender justice and access justice that is obvious, then would be time enough to struggle with discerning the right way to approach more subtle issues. Until then, the work is before us, awaiting our hands and feet, our minds and hearts. Finally, I suppose that the president and vice president-elect are on the receiving end of an overwhelming supply of advice at the moment. But if they were to ask me, I would offer them this. Joe and Kamala, you are going to be told from all sides now that it is your responsibility to heal this country. In fact, you seem to already have volunteered to make this your job. But don't believe it. That is our task as citizens, to repair the breach that has been created among us. You can't make it happen by executive order, and we have no right to sit around waiting for you to magically make harm disappear. You can give us your example, your wisdom, your encouragement, but you cannot do this thing by the force of your will or the power of your longing. We have to want it, and we have to do the work. You can inspire us You can remind us that we have done hard things and new things as a nation before. I acknowledge that I helped get you into this. I promise I will have your backs as we find a renewed vision and a better path forward toward a land of liberty and justice, peace and inclusion for all. In the African nation of Ghana, some of the people speak a dialect called Ga. That language includes the phrase woyaya. It means we go forward together, even in the face of hardship and danger, leaving no one behind, even when we don't always know precisely where the path will lead us next. Still, by the power of vision, we go forward together. So may it be for the United States of America. So let us join in song. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these, we carry in our minds and hearts until the time shall come when we will be together once again. Methodist pastor and blogger John Pavlovitz describes our shared challenge this way. Regardless of our relief at the end results, we already know this: we're every bit as fractured as we imagined. We're just as afflicted with racism as we feared. We are even further from equity than we thought. People of goodwill and integrity are needed now more than ever. The fight for humanity doesn't begin or end in this moment. It continues. So breathe, be encouraged, rejoice and be glad. And together, let us go on.
Say since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be. The goal may ever shine afar, the will to win it makes us free.
Thank you for being here this morning. We invite everyone to join us now for informal conversation on Zoom by clicking the link on our All Souls website homepage. Please be sure to send in your garden or harvest pictures for the Thanksgiving service on November 22nd. Don't forget to order your Sunday Plus meal for pickup next Sunday, and we hope you will be with us then to honor Veterans Day with our special guest, Reverend David Pyle, UUA staff person for our Mid-America region and active Army chaplain. Until then, please everyone, take care, stay safe, and be well this week.